So when you have an assignment that requires a data set, I'll have that link to the data set right underneath the assignment link. And if you click on it, it just gives you a preview of the data set, but we actually need to use the data set. So to download the spreadsheet, you'll click this little download button. And in Chrome, that should pop your download up to here, so that little purple arrow. And once it says done, you can click this guy to open the Excel file. And now I'm in Excel. So then it pops up with a yellow bar because this spreadsheet is shared and protected so that other people don't edit the spreadsheet that's shared. So we click enable editing, so that shares, it makes a copy onto my desktop, so whatever edits I make, it doesn't change the data, the spreadsheet that's shared. So this data is, you can see the spreadsheet is quite big. It's got a lot of columns, a lot of rows. This is questions that we asked, the survey we gave to our Math 140 students in fall of 2015. And we asked a lot of questions, basically just to collect some data for us to play with. So you can see the questions on the survey on the top of each column. And you can see there's quite a few questions that were on the survey. So there's quite a few columns all the way to column AI, so more than just the whole alphabet. And then there's also quite a few rows. So you can see the rows go down to 340. So there's 339 students that responded, plus that header row to get that 340. So you can see the questions that we asked and then their answers. Each one of these columns actually represents a set of data. So if I want to look at the statistics of gender in the Math 140 2015 class, then that's my sample. Then I would just look at this column. So we can look at one column at a time. And we're going to make a bar chart and a pie chart and a frequency table for one set of data. So we could do, for example, hair color. So I like to name my sheets and kind of sort my data, keep my data straight. So you can rename these tabs down here as the name of it, so you know what's there. So I'm going to put all data here on this sheet. And then I have a blank sheet here. I'm going to double click that name and we're going to put hair color here. Maybe we're all also interested in a political party. So what political party did everyone choose? So I'm going to do one for political party. So I can go to all data and we can see the hair color one right here. If I want to highlight this whole row and copy it onto the other tab, then I can hover over G, get that little black drop down arrow, and click on, and now it's all highlighted. Now if I do Control C, or you can right click and say copy, either of those things work. You say Control C, puts it on the clipboard, and you get this dotted marquee that goes around the data to show me that it's on the clipboard. And it says, okay, so what do you want me to do with this information now? So I have it on the clipboard. Where do you want it? And I say I want it over here on this hair color tab. And I want it to start in A1 and just go down from there. So I'll hit Control V, or you can right click and choose paste. And that gives me all the data over here. And the reason I want to do that is because I just want to look at hair color. This is a lot of data and I don't need all of that at once. So I just want to say, well, but what did most of the hair colors look like in Math 140 in 2015? And that this is how I would get that data just kind of by itself, so I can focus on that. And from here, I can make a frequency table or other tables and kind of put them into the same spreadsheet. So let's start by making a frequency table. So for that, I'm going to use pivot table. So I go insert, pivot table. And if you just click it, it will give you a pivot table. We'll give you Or you go to the drop down arrow. The choices are from table range or from external source. External means I'm pulling it up from some other place, but I want it from the table that's just right here next to it. So I'm going to choose from table range, or just click that and it'll default that. So it asks, what table range do you want me to use? Where should I get this data? And I want everything that's in column A. So I'm going to delete what's already in there and select column A. And where do you want it? That's what's down here. Do you want me to put it in a new worksheet, like over here, or like add another sheet here maybe? Or do you want it like right there next to it? Existing worksheet. I want it right here. So I want it on a worksheet that I already have, which is right here. And I want it in cell. I originally clicked in seed cell C2. So that's why it has that hair color, which means this sheet, cell C2. So this is cell C2 on the hair color tab. If I don't like that location, I can delete it and say, actually, let's put it in C3. So I'll delete that and just click where I want it. Maybe I want it in B3. Yeah, let's put it, I don't know. Let's do C3. Okay, so now it's there and I just click OK. So it's just pivot table and then select the data and then select where you want it and OK. Now it says, okay, well, what do you want me to put in the pivot table? Here's the information I have in my data table, but where do you want it? Well, I want to know what all the possible categories are. So that's what the rows of my table are going to be. So those are the possible answers: black, blonde, brown, other, red, or some people left blank. And I want to count them. So I'm going to take this data again and put it over here in values. And that'll give me a count of each value. And I also want proportion. So I have a frequency table, but I also want to show the proportions as a percent. So I'm also going to do that over here. So I'll click back in this table and I say, okay, I want to use this data again for another value. And I put it in the values again. The default for values is just count, but I want it to give me percentage. So I'm going to actually change this guy by clicking on this little drop-down arrow next to it and say value field settings. And I'm going to change the custom name from count to proportion. Actually, I'll just write proportion. And I have some options of what to put there. A count is the default, or you can put a sum or an average, so on. There's a whole bunch of options here. Or you can do a calculation to get a proportion. So show value as, and the calculation I want is the percent of the column total. So 102 divided by 337. That gives me the percent of people that had black hair. So I'll say proportion, percent of column total. So now I have my proportions written as a percentage. And I liked how it also made that column thinner. So it looks like a smaller table. So I'm going to also change this one. Instead of that big long title, I'll go back to value field settings and change this big custom title. I'm going to change it to just frequency. I also like calling it frequency because it's a frequency table. So there's my frequency table. One more thing I can do here is get rid of this blank line because that doesn't really give me any information. So to get rid of that extra line, I can take this drop-down arrow next to row labels and click that and uncheck the blank. So this is all the things that are going to be shown up in my table, and I don't want blank. So let's get rid of that. There's my frequency table. Now, once I have that set up, I can click in that table anywhere and make other tables. So from this frequency table, I can go to Insert, and let's get a bar chart. So here's my bar charts. Always go with 2D because the 3D gives like each bar some depth, which might be pretty, but it makes it look bigger than it really is. So it gives it a that shape is not really representative of the 2D data that we have. So we want to use 2D columns. And there's a bar chart. Maybe I want a pie chart now. So I'm going to click back into my chart and go to Insert, and let's get a pie chart. And again, I want a 2D chart because if I go to 3D, it's very pretty, but see how it makes that green one look really, really big and the purple one looks really, really tiny. And they are big and tiny, but not as much as the 3D chart makes it look. Like it really focuses on that. It gives that extra depth to the red and the green columns. So this one is a better representation of our 2D data. So I'll do that. So there's my frequency table, my bar chart, and my pie chart. You can stop here if you like. I also like to kind of personalize these though, so it's just to represent the data a little bit better. So from here, I also like to, same way I took out the blank here and changed the names here, just to make it look a little more professional and information better presented. So I can do some little tweaks here. So I can go to this plus sign and I can add in data labels. Let's see, let's do data labels. You can do them on the center of the bar or inside end or base. You can kind of decide where call outs. I kind of like it on top. Yeah, there's my outside end. That's what I like. I like the outside end. That gives me my counts on top. With the bar chart, the percentages, they would have a different scale. So you can't really have percentages and frequencies on the same bar chart because percentages, those are all under 1. So they'd all have a really, really tiny bar down here that we can't see. So I don't even care about these percentages. I'm just going to delete those because it uses a different scale. So I'm just going to keep frequencies. If I did want a bar chart that showed frequency, then I would make a new chart and say insert bar chart, do it again, and whoops, that came out blank because my cursor was not in the table. So click in the table, then do insert bar chart, and maybe this one I'll show the frequencies. Actually, I would have to change the table, so I'm not going to do that. Let's delete that. So we're just going to do counts on the bar chart, and we'll use the pie chart to have frequencies and values because the pie chart, the nice thing about a pie chart is it's the same scale because it's always in relationship to a whole pie. So they're always really, the size of that is really always in relation to one whole pie. So I can do the same thing over here, add some values. I want data labels. You can decide where to put them. Should I put them in the center or the inside end or just outside or wherever it fits best? Or call outs. I think I'm going to go with best fit on this one because I have 2 slivers and I also have 3 big ones. So I kind of like, for those 2, I want it to be right outside. You can move them around though. If you don't like where it landed, you can kind of move these around to however you want it. So maybe I'll put my 102 over here. And I can also add the percentages on this one. So I can go over to, I think this guy, no, that gives us a styles. Oh, look at that. That's kind of neat. That gives us some different styles of making it a little pretty. Well, that's kind of cool. Kind of like that. Or you can go to, let's see. I want to get out of the pivot table and do more options, and then I can click over here to the bars. There's a couple things you can do on here, like decorating it and making it look like you want, but I just want to add percentages. So I'll go over to the bar that's like the label options and add percentage. So some different things you can do to personalize it and make it look presentable. So fun things you can do to put on a poster or whatever you like. You can, at that point, you can do You can either print this as a PDF, or if you want just one chart to put on a poster, you can use a snipping tool in Windows and say, except for Windows 11, but earlier Windows have the snipping tool in Windows. So just type snipping tool in the search and it'll come up. I have it saved on my thing because I use it so often. And I can just say, oh, I want to get this pie chart and I want to put this on my poster. And then I copy this pie chart. Now it's on my clipboard because I use my snipping tool. And I go over to a Word document. And I'll get a new Word document here. And I can say Control V, and then I can add that to my project or whatever I want just to present it. So that's a nice way to present charts and graphs, to create them Excel, personalize them, and then you can cut and paste and put them into whatever you want. So let's do that one more time. I want to do it with political party this time, just to walk through that process of how to get those tables. So this time I want political party. I picked political party. It's a little harder to find on the chart. It's not like right there. So let's see. Remember, it's a big spreadsheet and these can get even bigger. So I want to do Control F to help me find it faster. So I hit Control F. I think on an Apple, I think it's Command F. And you can type a keyword to help you find it. And there's my column, where they chose which political party they identify with. So I can click on that Z to highlight the whole thing. When you hover it over, just make sure you get that little black arrow. That's when you click and to highlight all of it. Control C copies it. The marquee tells me it's on the clipboard and ready to get copied. I'll go over to the political party tab and say paste it. Control V. And from there, now I want to do a frequency table. So I'll go Insert, Pivot Table, from Table Range. And the table range I have is all of column A. So select all by the black arrow. And you can see it's in the marquee now, and it also landed right here. When it said, what table do you want? It says political party, column A. So political party is the name of the sheet. Column A is written like this. And where do you want me to put the pivot table? That's right here. So I want to in a worksheet that if I change this radio button to new worksheet, it will just create a brand new sheet right here that has the table. Or I can put it right into a sheet I already have. So I can say existing worksheet. I want to keep it on this political party spreadsheet right next to the data. And I think I originally clicked in C2 when I said pivot table. So that's what it thinks it wants. But if I don't like that, I can always change that and just highlight this, hit delete, and say, oh, you know what? Let's put that in B3 actually. And whatever you click, it'll pop up right here, and then click OK. All right, then we take our data options right here, drag it into rows once. That gives us our categories. And values twice, because I want once for counting to get the frequency, and I want to use it once to get the proportions. And I'm going to edit each of these columns a little bit. So the first one, I go to this little drop-down arrow, value field settings, change this to frequency as my name. And count is the default way it gives you the number, and that is how I want it. So that's good. For my next column, I want to do percentages. So I'm going to do value field setting. And I'll say, this time I want proportions as a percentage. Oops. So I can go down and say, okay, I don't want the count this time. This time I want you to make a calculation. So instead of summarizing the value, I want you to show me that value as a percentage of the column total, to show me what proportion of the whole group was Democratic, what proportion was independent, and so forth. So click percent of column total. Okay. Now I have my percentages. I don't want this blank line, so I'm going to delete that by clicking this little drop-down arrow and unchecking blank. Now I have my frequency table. Now I can go and insert a bar chart, and I can go back to the table and click in it to insert a new chart. So I insert a pie chart. And again, 2D, I gotta use 2D when you have 2D representation. So there's my pie chart and bar chart for this. And again, I can adjust to show what I'm showing in here. The options are over here, or you can right click to for options as well. To make these tables look like what you want them to look like. But that's the quick of how to get them into here. So if I don't click in the data and I'm over here and I try to insert a table, then what am I going to get, or a chart? I get a blank because there's no data. So I got to be in the table. And also if I have this highlighted and I try to insert another table, then it's just going to replace that table. So I don't want to do that either. So I'm going to not do that. So make sure before you make the chart, you click in the table you want the data from, and then you say insert.